In a girls' high school, there is a lecherous student named Issei. He was killed by a fallen angel due to his lecherous nature, but was transformed into a demon by Rias, whom he had summoned. He also became host to the power of the Red Dragon Emperor, gaining a bug skill that enhances his strength continuously. Issei meets fellow demon servants Akino, Koneko, Yuto, and Asia, who was also transformed into a demon after being killed by a fallen angel. After some time, Issei encounters his first major rival, Riser, who is not only Rias's fiancé, but also a high-ranking demon. In their first meeting, Riser beats Issei severely. However, being the protagonist of the anime, Issei trades his arm with the Red Dragon Emperor Drake for power, and defeats Riser at his engagement party, rescuing Rias. Following this, Rias grows more fond of Issei, giving him her first kiss and moving into his house. One morning, Issei's day starts with a sensual morning, but Asia interrupts by knocking on the door and then decides to join them by undressing. Unknowingly, Issei fulfills his dream of becoming a harem king, surrounded by beautiful girls. Since it's the annual big cleaning day at the old school building, the department's regular meeting cannot be held, so Rias decides to hold it at Issei's house. Due to Issei's closeness with club president Rias, rumors about him spread throughout the academy. Issei's arm occasionally pains him due to his sacrifice to the Red Dragon Emperor, and only Akino's magic can temporarily suppress it, although the treatment process is quite strange. After the treatment, Akino confessed her feelings to him. She was captivated by Issei's heroic actions during the wedding interruption. The meeting was held as scheduled at Issei's house in the afternoon. Issei's hospitable mother brought out his childhood photos, which instantly made Rias and Asia blush at his cute appearance. However, Yuto's expression changed as he looked through the photos. He spotted a holy sword in the background of a photo with Issei and a friend. Yuto asked Issei if he knew where the sword was, but Issei couldn't remember. Yuto seemed to become a different person. That night, Issei went out on a commission as usual. The client, a middle-aged man with blonde hair, did not make any outrageous demands. He simply wanted to pass the time drinking with Issei. Unbeknownst to Issei, this man was Azazel, the leader of the fallen angels. After completing the commission, Issei received a call from Rias. She instructed him to gather for a mission to subdue a lost demon. It turned out that a demon who had fled its master was causing trouble nearby. Rias quickly led the team to handle it. The fugitive demon seemed harmless, but was actually a spider demon that had lost its sanity. The spider demon immediately attacked Issei and two others. Yuto was distracted and nearly lost his life. Fortunately, Koneko managed to throw the demon away in time, and Akino followed up with a lightning strike to immobilize the spider demon. Finally, Rias killed it completely. After resolving the incident, Rias slapped Yuto because his distraction had almost put his comrades in grave danger. Facing Rias's questioning, Yuto appeared indifferent and simply said he was not feeling well before turning to leave. Issei, concerned about Yuto, approached him with care, but received only a cold response. Yuto lived solely for revenge against the Holy Sword. Issei learned about Yuto's past from Rias. The Holy Sword is the most feared weapon for demons, harming them on touch and destroying them if it cuts them. Despite its terrifying power, few can wield it. The church had initiated an artificial breeding program to create individuals who could wield the Holy Sword, known as the Holy Sword Project. Yuto was the sole survivor of this project. Understanding this, Issei realized why Yuto had reacted so strongly to the photo earlier that afternoon. Meanwhile, two church members arrived in town, one of whom, a blonde woman, pulled out the childhood photo of Issei and Yuto. In the rainy night, Yuto, who had left alone, remembered his painful past. He believed he did not deserve companions. Soon, he was attacked by the perverse exorcist Fried, who wielded the holy sword Excalibur. Already enemies, their encounter escalated quickly due to Yuto's foul mood, and they clashed fiercely. However, the holy sword's power overwhelmed Yuto, depriving him of his ability to fight. Fried received orders to retreat and vanished into the night, signaling the arrival of a new crisis. This man never expected that his sacred gear, the Red Dragon Emperor arm, would also have a passive skill, attracting the opposite sex. The power of the dragon poses a threat and charms those around. While many are hostile towards it, there are also many of the opposite sex attracted to this charm. Just this morning, the Red Dragon Emperor Draig warned Issei to be cautious as he sensed a very strong presence nearby, and the white could appear at any time. Issei did not know who this White Draig mentioned was. Draig explained that it was the White Dragon Emperor. The White Dragon Emperor and the Red Dragon Emperor are known as the two heavenly dragons and are eternal rivals. Both hosts of the heavenly dragons are destined to battle each other. Issei finds these matters uninteresting, as he is only focused on his goal of becoming a harem king. The Red Dragon Emperor encouraged Issei, suggesting he might indeed achieve this goal since the dragon's power naturally charms and attracts many women. This morning, two individuals dressed in white cloaks from the church arrived at the girls' high school, their purpose unknown. Issei noticed that Yuto was absent from school, likely due to issues related to the Holy Sword. Rias decided not to keep secrets any longer and told Issei everything about the Holy Sword project. The church had raised many children to wield the Holy Swords, of which there are 7. The original Holy Sword, Excalibur, broke in an ancient war. The church collected its fragments and used alchemy to forge 7 new Holy Swords. However, none in the Holy Sword project could wield them, leading to the project's failure. The planners eventually decided to eliminate all the subjects. By the time Rias found Yuto, he was barely alive but had made a fierce vow of revenge. Rias hoped Yuto, as a demon, would channel this intense resolve into something meaningful. This is why Yuto reacted so strongly to the photo of the Holy Sword. That evening, as Issei and Asia returned home, they felt a chilling presence, typical of church personnel. Issei worried about his mother's safety but discovered upon entering his home that it was his childhood friend Irina, who had joined the church, and her companion, a blue-haired woman named Zenovia. Clearly, Irina had found out about Issei's demon identity. Meanwhile, Rias was taken to a sauna room for a private conversation with the student council president, Sona. She informed Rias that church members had brought a holy sword to the school. Rias immediately thought of Issei's photo. Late at night, Issei went fishing with Azazel again. Azazel advised him not to look so gloomy, reminding him that he was a demon and that many things in the world operate naturally. Worrying about the future was pointless. The next afternoon, Irina and Zenovia came to Rias to issue a warning not to interfere with the church's actions. They explained that 3 holy swords had been taken by fallen angels, and their mission was to retrieve these swords. They also warned the demons to stay away from the holy swords. Rias expressed her complete disinterest in the holy swords. As they were leaving, Zenovia recognized Asia as a former saint and was shocked to see her as a demon now. Zenovia mocked Asia relentlessly and even threatened to send her to heaven. Hearing this, Issei became angry and challenged Zenovia. Yuto, witnessing this, also decided to stand up for Asia. Issei and Yuto immediately went outside to confront the arrogant duo. Irina, disregarding their past friendship, drew her holy sword and attacked Issei vigorously. Meanwhile, Issei was distracted, taking the opportunity to observe how Irina had grown up, particularly her chest. Irina criticized Issei for being pathetic, and then lightly slashed him, causing Issei to lose all his strength, demonstrating the power of the holy sword. Clearly, Irina won this encounter. On the other side, Yuto was not faring any better. Facing 2 of Yuto's magical swords, Zenovia easily destroyed them with a single strike. Yuto then gathered all his power to create a giant magical sword and struck with all his might, but Zenovia effortlessly countered it. Yuto's advantage lies in his variety of magical swords and speed. Swinging a giant sword not only lacked power but also hindered his pride in his speed. By now, Yuto's vision was clouded by his desire for revenge. This boy never expected that the seemingly noble and holy church would engage in such despicable acts behind the scenes. As a subject of the church's secret human experimentation project, he was to be completely eradicated by the church for not meeting their expectations. His companions paid with their lives to help Yuto escape. Filled with thoughts of revenge, Yuto was on his last breath when a red-haired witch appeared before him. From Zenovia, Rias learned that a fallen angel officer named Kokabiel had stolen the holy sword. Despite knowing the enemy was a formidable officer-level opponent, the church had sent only Zenovia and Irina, effectively treating them as expendable. Rather than let the holy sword fall into the hands of fallen angels, They were prepared to sacrifice themselves to destroy it. At night, Yuto decided to leave Rias because, ever since learning about the Holy Sword's existence, he only wanted to seek revenge and destroy all the Holy Swords. Issei, wanting to help Yuto, chose to assist him secretly, without Rias's knowledge, and enlisted Saji, a follower of the student council president Sona, as part of their force. They immediately started searching the streets for Zenovia and Irina. Unexpectedly, they found Zenovia and Irina reduced to begging on the street. Seeing this, Issei first invited them to have a meal. He then straightforwardly expressed his desire to help them destroy the Holy Sword, thereby aiding Yuto in his revenge. Given their common goal, this was a good proposal, especially since the two women alone were unlikely to complete such a mission on their own. In the evening, at Issei's invitation, Yuto joined the team as well. Now, with a common goal, the enemy of their enemy became their friend. Yuto didn't understand why Issei would do so much for him. Issei simply said it was because they were companions and needed to help each other. This reminded Yuto of the first time he met Rias, when he was subjected to endless experiments daily. He was deprived of his freedom and even his rights as a human. Despite this, everyone believed they were chosen by God, clinging to the hope of becoming special one day. However, no one was able to use the Holy Sword, and the experiments ended in failure. To cover up the project, the higher-ups chose to silence everyone involved. The children could only struggle painfully on the floor, coughing up blood. Yuto was the only one who escaped, but his life was also hanging by a thread, with pursuers close behind. At that moment, all Yuto could think of was revenge. The intense desire for revenge attracted the demon Rias. Yuto was grateful that Rias saved him at that time, but he escaped because of his companion's help. He vowed to channel their hatred into his magical sword and destroy the Holy Sword. This was the only way he could atone for escaping alone. After learning about Yuto's past, Issei and the others became even more determined to help him. For this reason, Issei skipped his evening commitment with Azazel. Azazel felt regretful, but the next moment, another mysterious man appeared before Azazel. This mysterious man would be Issei's nemesis in the future. 1,000 years ago, he survived the chaotic war among gods, fallen angels, and demons. Far from being frightened by the war's cruelty, it excited him and made his blood boil. Now he despises the peaceful era, and he is Kokobiel, an officer among the fallen angels. He has appeared in the mortal realm with one goal: to reignite the great war between gods, fallen angels, and demons, as only war can make him happy. To destroy the stolen Holy Sword, Issei and his group encountered the perverse exorcist, Fried again, who wielded one of the 7 Holy Swords. With hatred for the Holy Sword and disdain for Fried, Yuto immediately engaged him in battle. However, with the Holy Sword, Fried had the upper hand. Issei wanted to transfer the power of the Red Dragon Emperor to Yuto, which required first distracting Fried. Hearing this, Saji quickly summoned his sacred gear, Absorption Line, and effortlessly locked down Fried's left leg. The next second, Koneko threw Issei towards Yuto, and in mid-air, Issei transferred the dragon's power to Yuto. Empowered by the Red Dragon Emperor's strength, Yuto quickly overpowered Fried with his magic sword. Unexpectedly, an elderly voice emerged from the shadows. It was Valper, the mastermind behind the Holy Sword project, the man who had directly caused the death of Yuto's companions. At this moment, both Valper and Yuto's eyes were filled with hatred. Valper commanded Fried to channel his power into the Holy Sword to unleash its true potential. Suddenly, the tide of battle shifted, and Fried swung his sword at Yuto. Fortunately, Zenovia arrived just in time to block the strike for Yuto. Seeing the other 2 Holy Sword wielders also arrive at the scene, Valper and Fried chose to flee. Yuto and Zenovia quickly pursued them. At that moment, Sona and Rias arrived at the scene because Issei and others acted without permission. The 2 masters decided to punish their disobedient servants with 1,000 spankings. After the punishment, Issei and Rias returned home, where Asia was already waiting in a scanty apron. Seeing this, Rias also changed into a scanty apron. Meanwhile, Irina got separated from Zenovia while chasing Fried, who took the opportunity to attack the isolated Irina. Unable to withstand Fried's assault, Irina was knocked to the ground. The next afternoon, the group found Irina severely injured, But Yuto and Zenobia were nowhere to be seen. Before they could react, they discovered the exorcist, Fried, hiding in a nearby forest. Moreover, this time Fried's boss was also present, the 10-winged fallen angel officer, Kokabiel. Kokabiel admired Rias's red hair, remarking it was just as beautiful as Surzex's. He planned to center his chaos around the girls' high school in the city, forcing the Devil King Surzex to intervene, hoping it would spark a new war. Since the end of the Third War, Kokabiel had only felt boredom, while the leader of the fallen angels, Azazel, yearned for a peaceful life. Kokabiel believed that the fallen angels, gods, and demons were merely maintaining a delicate balance, so he decided to reignite the war. As Kokabiel's subordinate, Fried had acquired 2 holy swords stolen from the church. Indeed, like attracts like, and the perverse always attract the perverse. To protect the academy and the city, the student council was tasked with creating a barrier to prevent the upcoming battle from being noticed by the outside world. Meanwhile, Aquino independently requested assistance from Devil King Surzex. As everyone was preparing for battle, Kokabiel arrived at the girls' high school. His attack instantly destroyed the gymnasium, marking the first time Issei witnessed such a powerful assault, causing even his body to tremble. Dedrague warned Issei that Kokabiel was a man who had survived battles against devils and gods in the past, but assured him that he could still help Issei win this fight. During the battle, Kokabiel summoned a 3-headed dog from hell. Koneko was injured by the Hellhound, and Asia immediately came to heal her. Issei drew the Hellhound's attention, boosting the powers of Rias and Aquino. Issei himself became a target of the Hellhound, but was saved by Zenobia, who arrived just in time. Yuto also joined the fight, helping everyone to eliminate the Hellhound. Meanwhile, Valper fused 4 stolen holy swords. Within 20 minutes, the unleashed power from the holy swords could obliterate the city. The only way to prevent this tragedy was to defeat Kokabiel, but their powers were not on the same level. Thus, Yuto decided to destroy the holy swords alone, while Issei and others distracted Kokabiel. Kokabiel had anticipated this move and instructed Fried to use the newly fused holy sword to deal with Yuto. This sword, possessing the powers of the other 4 holy swords, was not something they could easily handle. Yuto felt powerless facing his nemesis Valper, who also taunted him about his inability. Valper had extracted divine elements from subjects of the Holy Sword Project to create sacred crystals, enabling him to create holy sword wielders for his own use. To Valper, Yuto and the other children were just experimental materials, disposable once used. Valper then threw the last sacred crystal to Yuto. Holding the crystal, Yuto was vividly reminded of his companions' tragic deaths. Valper had manipulated countless lives for his desires, and Yuto could not forgive this malicious individual. In the next moment, the souls within the sacred crystal were released in response to the vibrations of Yuto's heart. They appeared behind him. Yuto had always wondered if it was right that he alone survived. There were others with bigger dreams, others who wanted to live more than he did. Thus, he always felt guilty and could only continue by relying on the power of revenge. However, the next second, the images of his companions merged into Yuto's body. When the holder's thoughts and desires can alter the flow of the world, the sacred gear reaches the balance breaker state. Yuto heard his companions' voices. They did not want revenge for themselves, but now Yuto had to defeat the evil before him to prevent future victims. He transformed himself into a sword, cutting through all darkness. Yuto gained the ability of Blade Blacksmith and created the Sword of Betrayer. Zenobia also summoned the holy sword Durandal, a sword said to be unmatched by anyone and capable of cutting through anything it touches. As a perfect wielder of holy swords, Zenobia could barely manage it. Together, Yuto and Zenobia quickly broke Fried's fused holy sword. Valper, realizing something, was silenced the next second. The impatient Kokabiel prepared to end everything personally. This is the most absurd man I've ever seen. As the bearer of the Red Dragon Emperor, Issei awakened the ability to grow stronger by touching women's breasts. However, this time he faced a tough opponent, Kokabiel, a high-ranking fallen angel, and undoubtedly the strongest enemy Issei has ever encountered. Even with the enhanced properties of the Red Dragon Emperor arm, Issei and Rias were no match for Kokabiel. Yuto and Zenobia attacked the enemy together, hoping to buy time, but the gap in strength was evident. Yuto eventually attempted to ambush Kokabile with his demon sword, but he couldn't even pierce his wings. Kokabile easily caught Yuto's full-force strike with his fingers. Nevertheless, Yuto did not give up. During the battle, Kokabile inadvertently revealed that in the last three-way war, all four great devils and gods had died. Heaven was now solely supported by Archangel Michael. He resented that Cerzex had prevented further wars. With the peacemakers gone, special beings like the Sword of Betrayer emerged. The group was shocked to hear this news. As they felt powerless to retaliate, Issei found renewed strength. Rias promised Issei that if he could defeat Kokabile, she would let him touch her breasts as much as he wanted. The power of the sacred gear depends on the will of its host. Motivated, Issei evolved the Red Dragon Emperor arm and landed several punches on Kokabile's face. Although Kokabile was shocked by the power, it was clearly not enough to defeat a high-ranking officer like himself. Kokabile was about to unleash his full power when suddenly a white figure appeared above the battlefield. It was clearly the White Dragon Emperor who had been entrusted by the leader of the fallen angels to end the war. The White Dragon Emperor instantly stripped Kokabile of his wings. Kokabile prepared to unleash his full power to kill the White Dragon Emperor, but he was unaware of the White Dragon Emperor's bug-like ability. While the Red Dragon Emperor can double its bearer's power or transfer it to others, the White Dragon Emperor halves an opponent's power and converts it into the bearer's strength. With ease, the White Dragon Emperor landed a punch that swiftly ended Kokabile. Seeing the appearance of the White Dragon Albion, the Red Dragon Didraig immediately called out to him. They had not expected to meet again in such a manner. The White Dragon Emperor hinted that Issei needed to grow stronger to truly be his rival, then transformed into a beam of light and left the scene. With the departure of the White Dragon Emperor, the Midnight Chaos also came to an end. After this event, Zenovia decided to join the Devils and became a follower of Rias. Subsequently, Azazel, who had always asked Issei to accompany him fishing, revealed his true identity as the leader of the fallen angels. He had infiltrated the city in advance, sensing Kokabile's malicious intentions. Azazel was also highly interested in Issei's Red Dragon Emperor arm. Direct action by Azazel would have caused many complications, so he had asked the White Dragon Emperor to intervene and end the fight. Azazel reminded Issei that with his current strength, even doubling his power would not be enough to defeat Kokabile. Due to the incident with Kokabile, a summit meeting between the fallen angels, devils, and angels was soon to be held. The next afternoon, Devil King Cerzex, Rias' brother, arrived in the human world. Before the summit meeting, Cerzex decided to handle some private matters, namely visiting Issei's parents, as he already considered Issei his future brother-in-law. So, Cerzex visited Issei's home in the evening to greet them. Despite being a Devil King, Cerzex was not at all arrogant, but was incredibly approachable. That evening he sent Rias and Asia away and stayed alone with Issei. Issei felt quite embarrassed, having the Devil King sleep on a futon in his home, but Cerzex didn't mind at all. He thanked Issei for making his sister Rias so happy. Knowing Issei's unmatched obsession with breasts, Cerzex decided to offer him some advice. This immediately set off Issei's imagination. He had never thought about such things before, and was extremely excited. So much so that he hardly slept that night, his mind filled with thoughts on the matter. However, his excitement faded as school approached, replaced by a sense of crisis. The next moment, he saw a stranger standing at the school gate, who was clearly Issei's arch-enemy, the White Dragon Emperor. As is well known, the Red Dragon Emperor doubles the bearer's power or transfers it to others, while the White Dragon Emperor halves an opponent's power and converts it to the bearer's own. These two dragons are inherently complementary and opposing, and the humans who host these sacred gears are destined to become arch-enemies. Currently, Vali, the host of the White Dragon Emperor, has sought out Issei to simply get to know him. When Issei's companions arrived, Vali showed no interest in fighting Issei. Known as the two heavenly dragons, those involved with the Red Dragon Emperor and the White Dragon Emperor in the past have often met grim fates. Honestly, Vali was curious to see what end Rias would meet. He stated he was just there to say hello, boasted about his strength, and then turned to leave. At that moment, Rias's palms were already sweating with nervousness, as their current strength was no match for Vali. Drag told Issei that Vali was a complete form and also shared with Issei the history of their past. During the past wars among gods, fallen angels, and demons, each faction received support from their respective races. However, the dragons were an exception, mostly being indifferent to the war. At the climax of the conflict, there were two foolish dragons that started fighting each other. These two dragons ignored the world-dominating war and caused chaos on the battlefield. The reason for their fight? Dragon Albion had long forgotten it. Because the disruption by the dragons was so significant, the three major powers had to temporarily cease their war to deal with them. However, when their fight was interrupted, the two dragons became furious and devoured the leaders of the gods, fallen angels, and demons. The audacity of gods and devils to interfere in a dragon's battle enraged them. As a result, the physical bodies of the two dragons were sliced into countless pieces, and their souls were sealed within human bodies as sacred gears. Since then, the two dragons have encountered and battled multiple times using human hosts. This time, the ultimate battle has fallen to Issei and Vali, signifying that their fight is inevitable. Because the school was preparing for a parent-teacher conference, both Issei's parents and Rias's father came to the event. Unexpectedly, the parents hit it off right away and decided to go out for drinks, acknowledging the relationship between Issei and Rias. In this congenial atmosphere, Rias kissed Issei. At this time, Sirzex approached Rias with the intention of having her release another bishop, who had been sealed away in the old school building due to his overwhelming power that could not be controlled. Sirzex believed that Rias now had the capability to manage him effectively. The next afternoon, a group went to the old schoolhouse to lift the seal. To their surprise, they found a cute vampire who, despite his sweet appearance, was actually a boy dressed in women's clothing due to his fondness for cross-dressing. His name was Gasper, and he possessed a sacred gear called Forbidden Baylor View, which could stop time for anything he saw when he got excited. As a half-human, half-vampire, Gasper had been shunned by his own kind from a young age, making him extremely timid and unable to control his power. Following Sirzex's orders, Gasper had been sealed in this location. His abilities seemed to unintentionally improve, suggesting the potential to reach balance breaker status. Due to his shy nature and difficulty in communicating, Issei and others made great efforts to help him change. When Saji found out that this adorable girl was actually a boy, he began to question his life. At the same time, Azazel, the leader of the fallen angels, came here, claiming he was just out for a walk because he was out of money and hoping to find someone generous enough to offer a meal. Coincidentally, he ran into Issei and his group. Azazel informed them that the Forbidden Baylor View sacred gear could become incredibly dangerous if the holder's capacity was not sufficient. The quickest solution would be to drink the blood of the Red Dragon Emperor to control the power. Grateful for Azazel's advice, Issei immediately decided to save money to buy a gift for Azazel. Despite this suggestion, Gasper was very resistant to drinking blood. Eventually, it took Issei's persuasive talking to lower Gasper's guard. Issei, of course, had his own ulterior motives. At this time, everyone concerned about Gasper's situation came together. And thankfully, with Issei's guidance, Gasper finally let down his guard. After this, Akino invited Issei to a shrine in the mountains because someone wanted to meet him. Issei was surprised to find that this person was none other than the Archangel Michael. The man never expected that Archangel Michael, a legendary figure, would seek him out and even gift him the legendary weapon, the dragon-slaying sword, Ascalon. Michael planned to give the Ascalon to Issei, intending for it to merge with the Red Dragon Emperor arm. For Issei, historically the weakest host of the Red Dragon Emperor, this was a significant boost in power. Since the Great War had ended, although large-scale battles ceased, minor conflicts among the three powers persisted. Michael believed that if these skirmishes continued, they would eventually lead to everyone's destruction. He wished for the three major forces to unite and eliminate unnecessary conflicts. The only time such unity occurred was when the Red Dragon Emperor and the White Dragon Emperor disrupted the battlefield with their antics. Hoping to inspire a similar alliance, Michael placed his bets on Issei. Issei then synchronized the Red Dragon Emperor arm with Ascalon, and with a brilliant flash of golden light, the two truly merged into one. After this, Michael immediately turned and left. At this moment, Akino chose to reveal her origins to Issei. Akeno was the child of the fallen angel leader Barakiel and a human woman from a shrine. Her mother had saved an injured Barakiel, leading to a romantic involvement and eventually Akeno's birth. Because she carried half of the fallen angel's lineage, Akeno had only one fallen angel wing, which she despised as dirty. That's why she met Rias and sought to reincarnate as a demon, but ended up as a creature with both demon and fallen angel wings. Fallen angels had tormented Issei and Asia, breaking their spirits and even taking lives, so Issei harbored a strong dislike for fallen angels. However, this did not mean he disliked Akeno. He encouraged Akeno to accept herself, which deeply moved her. Akeno, feeling stirred, decided to reward Issei. At night, Issei continued to help Gasper with his magic control training. Under Issei's guidance, Gasper made significant progress, bringing Issei closer to his own dream. Asia showed great interest in this, but when Gasper tried to explain, Issei quickly covered his mouth. Meanwhile, Azazel and Vali were atop a building in the city, watching the night unfold. Vali expressed regret about living in a peaceful era without wars, as he yearned only to battle against the strong and found this peaceful time dull. As the tripartite summit was about to begin, Vali encountered a girl named Ophis, and it seemed they recognized each other. On the other side, Kaneko and Gasper stayed behind at the old schoolhouse while the others attended the meeting. The summit of the three major powers proceeded as planned, with all sides hoping to sign a peace treaty and expecting both the White and Red Dragons to adopt a peaceful stance. Michael also addressed the issue of Asia and Zenovia's exile. However, during the meeting, a mysterious force secretly invaded, led by the Infinite Dragon, Ophis, and her army of disaster. They first targeted Gasper, intending to provoke him and cause his sacred gear to go berserk, which resulted in the entire school campus falling into a state of time suspension. The next second, the leaders at the summit noticed the anomaly. Azazel immediately guessed that Gasper's powers had gone out of control. The strongest individuals were not affected by this power, while Issei and the others countered the time freeze using the power of the dragons and the holy sword. Just then, countless magicians suddenly descended from the sky. If they didn't quickly find a way to retrieve Gasper, everyone would be in danger. Rias and Issei immediately decided to rescue Gasper, while Vali went to distract the enemies. In an instant, Vali activated his balance breaker state. With just a casual strike, he wiped out a large group of enemies, but their numbers kept coming. Seeing this, Issei also prepared to move. Before acting, Azazel gave Issei 2 bracelets. Azazel explained that one bracelet could help Issei reach the balance breaker state as a last resort, because Issei was still not able to manage his stamina well. The other bracelet was for Gasper, as it had the effect of suppressing his berserk state. Although Issei had been fortunate in his battle so far, he was still just a slightly stronger demon than a human. If he couldn't control his power, he would eventually die, since Issei himself was a weak point of the Red Dragon Emperor arm. Issei and Rias quickly arrived at Gasper's location, where Gasper was being forced to use his powers. Gasper begged Rias to kill him to end the ordeal, but Rias would not do that. Since Gasper became her servant, Rias had promised to find a way for him to live satisfactorily. At that moment, Issei encouraged Gasper, telling him that they would not abandon him. Then, Issei cut open his own palm with Ascalon and offered his blood to Gasper. Seeing this, Gasper hesitated no more. He was determined to show his courage. As he licked the blood, Gasper immediately unleashed his suppressed powers, transforming into countless bats and hiding in the darkness. In an instant, he stopped time for all the enemies present. After dealing with the enemies, Issei quickly put the bracelet on Gasper to prevent any further power outbursts. He is the leader of the fallen angels, but he has no interest in world domination. He is particularly fascinated with collecting sacred gears, and for this reason, he developed his own artificial sacred gear, the Downfall Dragon Spear. While Issei and Rias were rescuing Gasper, the 3 leaders at the conference were also attacked by enemies. They quickly erected barriers for defense, only to find that the attackers were remnants of the old Devil Kings, led by Kateria, a descendant of Leviathan. Kateria argued that in the absence of gods and Devil Kings, the world should be transformed. Azazel decided to face her, eager to test his newly developed toy. As Gasper controlled his power surge, the tide of the battlefield began to turn. and Azazel decided to end the drama. He pulled out the artificial sacred gear, Downfall Dragon Spear, which immediately resonated with the Red Dragon Emperor. The appearance of this armor astonished everyone present. With just one strike, Azazel defeated the enemy. However, Kateria attempted to blow herself up along with Azazel. A deadly poison entered Azazel's body through his arm, prompting him to swiftly cut off his own arm to stop the poison and then obliterate the enemy with a single shot. Meanwhile, Issei and the others eliminated all the invading magicians. But as soon as the battle ended, Azazel was suddenly attacked, and the assailant was Vali. Vali expressed that siding with the army of disaster seemed more interesting, so he decided to join the opposing side. Vali, along with the infinite dragon Alphys, had little interest in world domination. They were simply interested in challenging the strong. Vali, fully named Vali Lucifer, is a half-blood of a former Devil King and a human mother, a true Devilkin with half-human blood, and also the host of the White Dragon Emperor. Azazel jokingly remarked that Vali's existence was quite monstrous. Without doubt, Vali is the strongest White Dragon Emperor to date. Vali mockingly asked Issei if he thought fate was cruel. Not only did Vali inherit the power of a Devil King, but he also acquired the power of a dragon, making him the strongest being. In contrast, Issei was merely a human, an exceedingly ordinary lecherous student before becoming a demon. In other words, Issei had nothing but the Red Dragon Emperor arm. His life was too mundane. So mundane that Vali couldn't help but laugh. Although their sacred gears were rivals, the gap between them was as vast as that between heaven and earth. Vali immediately declared his intention to kill Issei's parents, to drive Issei into a rage and turn him into an avenger. Issei, driven by anger, instantly entered the balance breaker state. The sacred gear would transform strong convictions into a source of power. Clearly, his pure fury was now directed at Vali. Without wasting words, Issei immediately attacked Vali with Ascalon. The White Dragon Emperor was well aware of the power of the Dragon Slayer. Even a single hit could be devastating. The two clashed in the air. Cerzex grabbed Rias, stopping her from advancing, as just approaching the intense aura of their battle could incinerate a normal person. In several exchanges, Vali felt that Issei was too weak, so weak that he couldn't even touch a single hair on him. He easily knocked Issei to the ground with a kick and stripped him of all his power. At that moment, Issei noticed that Vali's wings were radiating energy. It turned out that Vali had absorbed too much power, and the excess energy was spilling out of his wings, allowing him to maintain flight indefinitely. The next second, Vali immediately targeted Issei's companions. Seeing this, Issei had no choice but to use his body to shield his friends from the attack. Issei quickly amplified the power of Ascalon and then punched, shattering Vali's armor. He continued to transfer power to Vali, intending to overload the White Dragon Emperor's wings beyond their limit, which would cause the sacred gear to collapse. The next moment, Issei delivered another powerful punch that sent Vali reeling back. However, Vali remained calm and quickly summoned his armor again, determined to fight until his opponent could no longer battle. This was the nature of the conflict between the Red Dragon Emperor and the White Dragon Emperor. However, at that moment, Issei's body could no longer sustain the effort. The Red Dragon Emperor urged Issei to flee, warning that if he overexerted himself, he would surely die. But Issei could not abandon his companions. Just then, Issei remembered that the sacred gear could evolve in response to strong beliefs. With this in mind, he picked up the fragments of the White Dragon Emperor's sacred gear that he had just scattered and fused them into his right hand. He intended to transplant Vali's power into his own sacred gear. The White Dragon Emperor found this amusing, as the powers of the two dragons were antagonistic, and merging them was essentially suicidal. However, to his surprise, Issei actually managed to accomplish the fusion. Seeing this, Vali became even more interested in Issei and decided to use his full power. Vali's behavior made everyone present feel it was abnormal. To this, Azazel commented, "How could housing a dragon inside one's body be normal? Now, let's see just how abnormal the other dragon can be." He then explained Vali's skill to Issei, which halves the size of everything within its range, including reducing Rias's bust by half. Vali never imagined that just because of a woman's bust, he nearly got beaten by Issei to a point where he could hardly take care of himself. Vali believed that Issei had the power to force him into using his Juggernaut Drive form. The next second, he was ready to transform into Juggernaut Drive. But just then, the battle was disrupted by a man, Bi Ku, a descendant of Sun Wukong, and Vali left with him. At that moment, Issei exhausted all his strength. The peace agreement was successfully signed. Azazel became the advisor of the Occult Research Club, guiding the proper growth of their sacred gears. At the request of the Devil King, everyone moved into Issei's house.